Pro cyclists and amateurs alike are starting to change the way they think about the stack height on their bikes. We're seeing more and more riders fit spaces underneath their stem to make themselves faster. Why? Well, the thinking is with a higher front end, you can reduce your frontal area to the wind and sustain a more aerodynamic position. So I've got one of these, an adjustable stem. I'm going to fit it to my bike, try out a few different positions and see if it's actually faster. I've always just slammed the stem on basically every bike I've ever owned. But if a higher front end could be faster, and the trends in pro cycling suggest it could be, I want to find out. So this is my test road. It's about 500 meters long and it's really flat, so it's nice and consistent. I'm going to ride it 3 times in each setup. Crucially, trying to keep my forearms horizontal in each position. And I'm going to try and maintain a speed of 40 kilometers an hour for each run and then record the power required to hold that speed. So I'm going to do the first run in my standard position as a control, and then I'm going to fit the adjustable stem and see if either the really extremely high or extremely low position are any faster. Okay, so that's the minus 40 degree setup. Quite extreme, pretty old school looking, I think, as far as slammed stems go. I'm not convinced I'm going to be able to even hold my drops, but let's give it a go and see if it's faster. Well, that was the super low position. I'm not convinced that was faster. Definitely felt a lot harder to hold the horizontal forearms. It looks quite cool. Definitely could go more extreme, getting rid of these spaces or a longer stem, but I guess this is kind of representative of the proper slam your stem setup that pros have been using for years. So now it's time to try the stem angled plus 40 degrees and see what that's like and if it's going to make me faster. I hope not, because it's going to look really weird. Well, there we go. That's plus 40 degrees. Pretty extreme. I can't say I'm a fan of the way it looks, but let's test it and see if it's quicker. I'm just popping down the shops. That is absolutely mental. I can't believe that. Well, I need to go back to the studio and crunch the numbers. But if what I saw just then is right, that is crazy. That's absolutely crazy. I can't say it was particularly fun to ride. It's quite twitchy. Obviously, that's pretty extreme. And if I had more time and more resources, I could try a position between my normal position and something like this. But as an example, I think that's going to be really surprising how much difference there is between that and my normal position. Back to me in the studio. Thanks, me. Now, this testing is in no way definitive. It's very specific to me, and obviously it's open to real world errors, but it should be enough to get a good idea of the differences between the 3 different positions I tested. Before I go over the results, I wanted to talk to someone who has done a lot more research on this topic than I have, and even designed their own aero bike around the idea that a higher stack height could be faster. Arne Peters is a Dutch racing cyclist and frame designer, and he's developing the extreme-looking Morpheus Reppit. I wanted to talk to Arne and find out a bit more about why a higher stack height could be faster. It would be great to understand what is the problem you're trying to solve, and why would a rider want a higher stack height?
To get faster, you either have to decrease the amount of resistance you have, or increase the power. With my stack height, I want to increase the power while keeping the resistance as low as possible. So getting into a really aerodynamic position while being able to produce a lot of power. That's the idea. So you built the Morpheus Reppit. How does that solve this problem and offer riders a higher stack height? So I just basically increased the head tube, so it's taller. That makes it easier so you don't need a very long fork to get the stem very high. So you don't need a lot of spacers, and the stem can be slammed basically. Okay, nice. So I'm telling people to not slam their stem, but with your bike, they can slam their stem. How much taller is the head tube compared to a more mainstream race bike? It's like 5 to 8 centimeters or 50 to 80 millimeters higher. So it's quite a substantial difference.
Cool. And how did you come to that figure? How did you test different positions to design and eventually build the Reppit as a bike?
Yeah, so I had a pretty basic race bike geometry, and I got a adjustable stem and tried to just try different positions and see what works and what was, first of all, fast, but also what position was I able to hold for a longer period of time. So that's how I basically designed the bike around my position, and I figured, okay, if this is right for me, other people, it should be right for them, more or less.
Okay, so what about the UCI? Is it UCI legal?
It should be. My frame, it has, with the new UCI regulations, it was pretty close. So I've also got very wide forks and wide seat stays, but it was just within the limits. I didn't yet get the approval, but just if I look at the regulations, it should be within the limits.
And do you think in the future, mainstream bike brands will adopt this philosophy and start making race bikes with higher stack heights?
It depends on what the pros are doing, because I think many of the big brands just build the bikes for the pros, and that's also why the normal consumers like us, we don't really fit on the race geometries of the pros. But I think for pros as well, there's an opportunity to, if you're like a rider that goes in the breakaway all day and you have to be really aerodynamic, yeah, I think it's an opportunity to have a higher stack. So maybe there will be multiple aero bikes per brand, or aero bikes will just shift to higher stacks in general. I don't know, but to me it feels like an opportunity for sure.
Okay, so it's time to look at the results of the testing that I've done. So the control run in my standard position with my normal stem that I run day to day, the average speed across the 3 runs was 40.9 kilometers an hour. And to sustain that speed, I had to put out an average power, again, across the 3 runs of 379 watts. For the negative 40 degree stem, the average speed across the 3 runs was 40.4 kilometers an hour. But to sustain that speed, I had to put out an average of 400 watts. And then, the moment you've all been waiting for, the plus 40 degree stem. And this is really, really interesting. The average speed across the 3 runs was 40.5 kilometers an hour. And the average power was 363 watts. So 16 watts less than my regular position. I mean, I don't know about you, but to me, that's mind-blowing. This is nothing new. Graham O'Brien pioneered a super tuck in the mid-90s that was the same theory of closing off that frontal area to the wind to be more aerodynamic. And that's actually banned by the UCI, but this is still UCI legal. And it's really interesting seeing people like Arne pioneer frame development to really bring this idea that a higher stack height could be faster to the masses. 16 watts for me is a huge saving, and at higher speeds that's likely to be more. So there's a lot of energy to be saved in the pro peloton. That could be the difference between a breakaway going all the way to the line or getting caught. That could be the difference between winning and losing. Will I keep this position? Probably not with that stem, but it's definitely made me rethink the way I set up my bikes to be faster. What's next? Personally, I think this is the new narrow handlebars, especially if the UCI go through with their ban of narrow handlebars in the pro peloton. I think we're going to see riser stems and higher stack heights in pro and amateur races alike in the next year or 2. But what do you think? Would you run a stem like this? Would you consider not slamming your stem? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. And while you're down there, remember to click like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you can be reminded every time we upload a new video.